The war in Israel is not over, it's just mutating. There are still at least 5 fronts that Israel has to worry about. Of course, Gaza, it's not over there. Judea and Samaria, or what they call the West Bank. Lebanon, Hezbollah up there is still a problem. And then Iran and its proxies, and then Syria. So that would make 5. So there have been ongoing strikes inside Gaza, airstrikes, artillery strikes, and things like that. As a matter of fact, there have already been 3 IDF soldiers killed since the ceasefire took place in firefights with Hamas. They get shot at almost every day from Hamas. They have taken out more than 40 fighters emerging from tunnel systems in the red zone. So the yellow line separates the red zone, which is controlled by Hamas, and the green zone, which is controlled by the IDF. They've killed more than 40 Hamas fighters emerging from tunnel systems in the green zone and engaging with IDF forces and trying to kill them. Hey, everybody, for over a decade, scammers, mostly out of Nigeria, have been stealing my photos to create fake profiles and scam women out of money. They use my pictures to create these fake social media profiles, and it must be effective because I've heard from hundreds of women over the years who have lost money to these jokers. It's infuriating, and honestly, it's violated my privacy in ways I never expected. But I'm not the only one. You know, Americans lost more than $12.5 billion to internet crime last year. And get this, 1 in 3 Americans will have their identity stolen at some point in their lives. That's why I partnered with Aura, who's sponsoring this video. And it's my favorite VPN right now because it's actually a lot more than just a virtual private network. It gives you all the VPN features you'd expect, but also scans the dark web for your info and alerts you fast if you've been leaked. It even sends removal requests to data brokers, you know, those guys who sell your personal details to advertisers and spammers. It also alerts you quickly if anyone tries to use your stolen information to open a credit or bank account in your name. They'll even cover you with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance if the worst. Let's get to the news. Now, this map is likely to be the map of Gaza going forward for the foreseeable future. It's not likely that this is going to shift or that Israeli forces are going to pull out completely anytime soon. There are at least 9 tribal militias, you'd call them, that exist in the green zone who are anti-Hamas. If Israel were to pull out today, there would be essentially a civil war inside Gaza between these militias and Hamas for control. Now, Hamas still has several thousand fighters in the red zone. They are still shooting mortars at the IDF. They're still trying to blow them up with IEDs. They have succeeded in a couple cases with that. This is the new iron beam that Israel is rolling out, actually putting into use starting this month. They've extensively tested it. This is a technology, by the way, that both the United States and Russia had toyed with and tried to make work and never could make work. But Israel made it work. And now that Israel made it work, that technology will trickle down to the United States and will benefit the United States greatly, especially if they go forward with this Golden Dome idea over the United States. It'd be a lot cheaper. In reality, the risk is escalating on all fronts for Israel. So it is very likely that Israel is going to go back to fighting in Gaza very soon. They have sent home some of their units, especially their special forces units that have been in Gaza constantly since the beginning. I don't foresee anything kicking off before the first of the year, but in January, they may go back to fighting because Israel has not accomplished its second goal, which was to disarm Hamas. And Hamas still has sway. They still have power in Gaza, and that is unacceptable for Israel. There's been a lot of sort of rancor in Israel over the charges that have been levied against the prime minister. Now, the charges are essentially charges of corruption, people in his office taking money from Qatar to allow money into Gaza. This is something that's been going on for years. A lot of people have said that Netanyahu doesn't want the war to end because as long as the war is on, people are on wartime footing and they're not going to deal with all this sort of extraneous stuff. It gives them something more important to focus on. But as the war is winding down, the calls for these investigations to ramp up have been expanding. And the court has been putting more and more pressure on Netanyahu to be there for the court hearings and to testify on his behalf. But they're talking like 3 times a week. This guy's the prime minister of a country at war. So he's saying that's not feasible. He put out a statement.
Almost a decade has passed since my investigations began. My trial has been ongoing for nearly 6 years and is expected to continue
for many more years.
As the exculpatory testimonies and evidence which completely collapse the false allegations against me are revealed in court, and as it becomes clear that the evidentiary basis against me was formed through the commission of serious offenses, my personal interest has been and remains to continue this process until its very end, until my full acquittal on all charges. The security and political reality, the national interest, these dictate otherwise. The state of Israel faces immense challenges and alongside them, enormous opportunities. To repel the threats, to realize the opportunities, national unity is required. The continuation of this trial is tearing us apart from within, stirring up these disputes and deepening the rifts. I am certain, like many others in the nation, that an immediate end to this trial will greatly help to lower the flames and promote the broad reconciliation that our country so desperately needs. I have deliberated on this a lot, but recent events have tipped the balance. Due to a decision by the panel of judges hearing the case, I am required to testify 3 times a week. This is an impossible demand, not required of any other citizen in Israel. President Trump called for an immediate end to the trial so that he could, together with him, vigorously promote vital interests shared by Israel and the United States in a window of time that is unlikely to return. Time and again, I have been elected in democratic elections and received your unwavering trust to continue serving as the Prime Minister of Israel, first and foremost, to fulfill our nation's historical objectives.
All I'm going to say is that the temperature is rising in Israel over this trial. President Trump has called for Netanyahu to be pardoned and just exonerated from all of this. I don't really like that, to tell you the truth, because although many U.S. presidents have done this, including Barack Obama, I don't think the United States should be inserting itself in the internal politics of any other country, but if just let it play out, right? Especially it's any other country that's an ally. Nevertheless, that's where that is. Now, over the past few weeks, and especially in the last 2 days, the violence has really spiked in Judea and Samaria. There have been several terror attacks. There were 2 in one day yesterday, both of them carried out by teenagers. There were 2 separate ramming attacks that resulted in injuries on the part of IDF soldiers. One female soldier was hit by a car. They managed to catch up with the kids driving the car, and the kids fought back and were eliminated by the IDF. The second was a similar thing where a guy tried to run over some IDF troops somewhere in Hebron. The IDF caught the kid, 17 years old. There's a video of them talking to the kid. He's not handcuffed. He's got a backpack on. The IDF soldiers are just talking to him, and they're not really paying a lot of attention. And then the kid reaches behind him and reaches into his backpack, and they don't do anything. They're just like oblivious. And he pulls out a big knife and tries to stab the guy in the face, one of the IDF soldiers. And then he goes after the other IDF soldier. The wounded is able to pull out his M4 and give this kid a dirt nap. So he shuffled off this mortal coil and took the room temperature challenge. They are also calling for an investigation into the shooting of 2 Palestinians who were taking shelter in a building, and the IDF was trying to get them out. There was the video that came out that shows these guys coming out, that kind of crawling under a door and with their hands up and everything, and then standing up and going back under that door into the building. And about that point, the IDF opens fire on them and eliminates them. And I have to say, the way it looks like these guys were trying to surrender and were told to go back inside, and then were shot. But we don't know what was said. Obviously, you can't tell from the video what was going on there. And if it turns out that these guys were executed or killed unnecessarily, you can bet that the guys who killed them will get prosecuted. Now, let's move on to the northern front, Lebanon and Syria. You know that the Lebanese military was supposed to have disarmed Hezbollah by now, and they haven't been able to do that. Hezbollah continues to try to reconstitute its forces. They've been receiving money from Iran and weapons from Iran. Some of them get intercepted on the way, but not all. So that's a serious concern for Israel. And Israel has said that if Hezbollah is not disarmed by the end of the year, that they will go back into Lebanon on the ground with a lot of troops, and they will disarm Hezbollah themselves. That will be a much wider operation if they do that. They have been striking from the air every day. When they identify Hezbollah targets, they go ahead and blow them up now just to keep Hezbollah on the back foot. But there have been reports out of Iran that if Israel goes back to war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, that Iran will attack as well and will also try to get all of its other proxies to attack Israel at the same time. So we could go right back to the kind of fighting that we saw earlier in the war, where there are rockets coming out of the north, there are rockets or incursions coming from Syria, there are rockets and drones being fired from the Houthis in Yemen. And not only have the Houthis in Yemen continued to threaten, but they have apparently sent a whole bunch of Houthi troops to Syria. And those Houthi troops are planning to invade Israel, to actually commit an October 7th style attack on Israel by coming across the border from Syria. Now, I can tell you that's going to be pretty hard for them to do, because these guys, number one, they're camel herders and they're not soldiers. Number two, there's a large buffer zone between the areas where these guys could be congregating and the border of Israel that is now controlled by the IDF inside Syria. And number three, the IDF is on very high alert. They're much more aware now than they were on October 7th. And so these guys are going to meet their maker very quickly, most likely at the end of a 30 caliber chain gun or something. There is a continuing threat, and it's not just continuing, it's rising. There's apparently a large number of jihadi forces that are marshaling their strength in Syria, preparing to invade Israel. Israel is prepared to fight them there, but President Trump is telling them, you can't do that. You have to maintain dialogue with Syria. We want the Syrian leader, al-sharaa, to succeed at pulling Syria back together into a cohesive nation, stop being a failed state, allow people to return to Syria, and let's get Syria back on the road to democracy. The Institute for the Study of War has said that they believe it's very likely that al-sharaa will be assassinated in the next few months by people who believe he's not jihadi enough. If that happens, then it could be that Syria falls back into chaos and Israel will come out to keep their troops up there on the border. The bottom line is President Trump is basically punishing Israel for keeping a sizable force up there and being ready for that, because he thinks it is not conducive to helping al-sharaa consolidate his power and lead Syria out of the civil war that they've been in for 15 years. There are a bunch of Iranian-backed militias that maintain thousands of troops inside Iraq. We still have US troops inside Iraq, a couple thousand of them. And Iran has been working very hard to control Iraq's politics, to control the prime minister and the president in Baghdad, and they've largely succeeded.